Welcome to the Wakefield Doctrine, the theory of Clarks, Scotts, and Rogers. This is the second of our video posts. Hope you enjoy it. Let us know. Send in your cards and letters. Before I get into this, I was thinking that anybody technologically inclined to be able to do a video reply or video comment, if you will, do this thing, send us the link, and we'll post your video comment in either the comments or perhaps even do a post on it itself. And as a reward for doing that, a hat for your damn head. Oh, police. Now, this is such live, whatever we'll call this. This is not TV. This is live internet virtual reality. So here I am, trying to film a video post, and I see flashing lights in the background. I think that they're a ambulance and not the police. So we may be slightly interrupted as we go along, but to the point, to the post rather. I spoke to the progenitor Scott this morning. It's been a while. On occasion will call him, and we had a good conversation. Progenitor Scott, of course, goes way back, back to the before time, back to the 60s. Even before there was a Roger, there was a Scott. In fact, there's a little story. I was going to tell the story of the eureka moment of Scotts, Clarks, and Rogers, but the other story was where these two guys came from was back in the day, went to college, and moving into the dorms, I had a guitar that I would make noise with, and this person who turned out to be Scott, came up immediately and started banging on my door, insisting that we show him the guitar that I had. And the rest is history. But the connection between Scotts and Rogers is that Scott, after a short time, decided he didn't like dorm life, went to live in what was affectionately known as the Hole, which was a finished basement, no house on top, just a basement in Johnston, Rhode Island, where he lived with a couple of bandmates. He was in a band, Sage. This is going back to 69, 70, I think. And so Scott lived in the Hole, and on one visit, turns out he had a new roommate, which was Roger, the Roger, progenitor Roger. That's how it began, as the lady would say. A little bit of background. The Rogers out there probably will enjoy that kind of thing. God knows why, but hey, I can read fan mail, and they say give us personal background. So there's the story of the meeting of the Scotts and the Rogers progenitor variety. More to the point of the doctrine, though, there was a eureka moment that, if I look back and look for the point that the Wakefield Doctrine, as we're presenting it now, came to be. The eureka moment involved the progenitor Scott, who at the time, this is now early 80s, he worked in a music store, Tony Americans in Pawtucket, and what Scott would do there would be to sell equipment, musical instruments, and also do repairs. Scotts tend to be the technical guys. If your car was broken and you needed to replace the brakes, somehow Scott would have taught himself how to do that, and you would have gone to Scott, and he would have helped you. So he was skilled technically on electronics, such as it was in the early 80s anyway. So I'm in there one morning, probably a Monday morning, standing in the store talking, and the customer comes in. Now Scott's behind the nice glass top. This is an old building, so big 18-foot ceilings, tin plate ceilings, old building, smelly but old. Anyway, so Scott's behind the repair counter. This guy comes in the door with a tape deck under his arm. Now, back in those days, cassette tapes were the medium, and what he had he came up to the counter and said, "Hey man," we talk like that. "Hey man, my new tape deck doesn't work no more." And what we looked at, and I stood in the background, I wasn't involved, so I was watching the whole thing. And what you saw was sometimes called a dubbing deck. I probably not got the right terms, but there were two sets of recording heads. So you could play two cassettes at once, or you could record two at once, or more likely you would dub one cassette on one head to the other. As such, it had two sets of controls for each, one for each cassette, but it also had a master control, master volume, master tone, in an odd location, lower middle of the top of the device. So the guy pushes it across the counter to Scott and repeats, "I just bought this thing. It worked just fine. Now it doesn't work. Can you fix it for me?" Scott stands there, doesn't say anything. He looks at the deck, looks at the machine, and I was watching, and there's something. Look comes over his face. What he does next, though, is the seed of the Wakefield Doctrine. He reaches behind the counter, pulls out a roll of electrical tape, the black rubber electrical tape, tears off a little 2-inch piece, goes up to one of the dials on the deck, turns it, and then puts the electrical tape over the top of it. It was what we call a thumbnail control, so it was recessed, hard to use, but he taped it over, and then just pushed the tape deck back to the customer and said, "There, it's all fixed." Light bulbs all over the place for me at that moment. It was just amazing. You could have knocked me over with a feather as the implications of what I just witnessed hit me. And what that was is that the way Scott saw the problem was fundamentally, totally different than I would have seen it. And not only did he see the problem differently, his resultant solution was fundamentally, totally different from what I would have come up with. As a Scot, now we'll go a little bit into theory. Read the blog. You'll get the background on it. Scots deal in action. Scots do not spend a huge amount of time reflecting and wondering and guessing. Scots do stuff. They act. We all know that. So Scott saw the problem, saw the solution, and his presentation of the solution was as simple as that. The guy, well, I'm sorry, I missed the punchline. The guy had turned down the volume on the master volume at some point and forgot about it, and spent probably 2 days fiddling around with the individual volume controls, and the damn thing wouldn't make any noise. Right? Clocks can't tell jokes either, by the way. So Scott saw the solution, and his solution to it was eliminate the problem. He taped over the master volume, turned it up, of course. The thing was fixed. And to drive that point home, there was no need for him to explain that to the guy. Hey, look, the problem is fixed. Go home, enjoy yourself. That was the moment when I recognized that we live in different worlds. We experience different worlds, more to the point. And that our behavior is a result of what we're seeing. Example, and then we'll end this thing. If I had been left to solve the problem, I would have probably spent 15-20 minutes talking to the person. And one might wonder, well, what good is that? The guy doesn't know what the problem is. Then, when I eventually figured it out, as I would, because clocks are pretty bright guys and girls, I would have then wanted to tell the person how it wasn't their fault, that anybody could have made that mistake, and here's what you should do, and perhaps I could call you and remind you every other week, and if you want, I can help you keep that control up, as a little Clark-like joke to the Clarks in the audience, in the readership. We would so do that. Rogers, on the other hand, although that it didn't strike me then, Rogers would have also recognized the problem, but they would have known that their mission was to educate the person on the history of tape recorders, sound reproduction, tape, electricity, and then after sufficient chastisement of the problem customer about his sloppy work with the tape recorder, if he felt that the person did understand now the correct knowledge, he would have also provided the fix. But all of this comes back to that moment when Scott, by demonstration, which for Scott there can be no other way, he simply saw the problem, the solution presented itself, he effected the solution, end of process. Life goes on. Hats off, give them credit. Now they have their downsides, that's for another video. But that was the moment that the Wakefield Doctrine, actually at that moment, that was the moment the theory of Clark, Scotts, and Rogers got its start. Years later, it would have become apparent that we had to call it something other than the theory of Clark, Scotts, and Rogers, and then we got into the Wakefield Doctrine as the public name of this thing of ours, and that's a post in itself. So, for those of us who are still around tomorrow, I may post this today, but if I do post it today, call us tonight, Saturday night drive. The number's on the blog. Call us at between 8 and 8:45 Eastern Standard Time or Daylight Savings Time or whatever the hell we're on right now. And for those of us, which means basically, as Scott and I this morning recognized, Scotts and Clarks will probably still be around tomorrow. If Captain Campbell there was correct and the Rapture goes down, then we'll have to, one of us will have to pretend to be a Roger. Not me. Anyway, that's all from the Wakefield Doctrine. We read, enjoy, write comments. Bye.